this up for posterity later. Troy is recording now. Okay, thank you, Troy. So let me reset there a little bit. To me, the science is what has to happen. That's your process. The art is how you make it happen. Those are your methods. And this is where people start to light up a little bit because, look, you're all professionals here. Nobody wants someone to stand in front of the room, me, and tell you how to do this stuff. I have worked in restaurants. And I've worked with a lot of companies in this capacity to help them sell more to whoever their customers, clients, partners are. But I'm not going to stand here and pretend for a second that I know how to sell to your customers nearly as well as you can. But what I am good at is reminding people of the jobs that need to be done. And then my art is coming in and being creative with you around messaging, around tactics, around techniques to develop your own methods that feel right to you to go out there and get those jobs done, right? So I agree with anybody who thinks that selling is an art and a science. And it's not that anybody who said it's a science is wrong or anybody who says that it's an art is wrong. No, I believe it's a combination of both. And we have to wrap our brains around the jobs to be done so that we can then identify what are the best ways for us to get them done. We're going to talk about prospecting in a couple of weeks. And I'm going to talk about the phone. I'm going to talk about email. I'm going to talk about knocking on doors. I'm going to talk about, mapping territories, things like that. The phone may not work for you. Okay, I'm not telling you have to use it. Email may not work for you. Text may not work for you. I'm not telling you have to use it. I don't tell anybody they have to use this stuff. But what I can tell people is, at some point you need to put yourself in front of strangers. How do you feel is the best way to do that? At some point, you have to put yourself in front of people who aren't strangers. There's someone we need to be doing more business with. How are you going to do that? And then once you put yourself physically in front of somebody, what do you say, right? Those are the things that we're going to talk about. And I encourage you to make anything that I tell you your own. Because we have, 33 people on this call, including me and some note takers. So let's say there's, 27, 28 people here. You're going to sell at least 27, 28 different ways. Not a darn thing wrong with that. So long as we are accomplishing and completing the jobs that need to be done. Any pushback to that? Everybody with me on that? I want to make that clear distinction because we're going to talk about the science today and then we're going to go into methods over the next several lessons. So drop a 1 in the chat if you're with me, or drop a hell yeah in the chat if you're feeling frisky on a Friday, on a Halloween Friday. Let me know if you're with me. Let me know if you need a little bit extra clarification because I want to make sure we get this distinction right. Lamonda's with me. She's got a big smile on her face now too. So I'm happy about that. I got a lot of 1s here. I was actually trying to prompt Lamonda to give me that smile. I saw a little bit of a grin, and now okay, there it is. There we go. I'm leading the witness here. Gracie says, hell freaking yeah, dude. That is like my favorite response of the day so far. Okay, so what I want to do is, I like these keep coming. Kevin's all in. Now we're one-upping each other in the chat. This is wonderful. Okay. What I want to do here is go through what I refer to as my 4 steps of the selling process. Okay, and I want to get into this. This is the jobs that need to be done. And when you actually go to map out your own sales process, if you are an inside seller, it's going to be different than someone who is outside. If you are selling to big chains like Firehouse Subs or Yum Brands or whoever, then your process is going to have a lot of extra steps in it. But for years, I've broken down essentially the things that need to be done, right, by a seller. What are the best selling activities that you can devote your time to every week? And that's what I'm going to outline for you here. And then I'm going to go into depth with each of them. But step 1 of the seller's process, that's identify who you can help. We've spent some time doing this, right? Who are your best customers? What do they look like? How do I identify them? right? How do we know who to call on? How do we know who not to call on, right? I don't need to beat this horse to death any more than I already have, but that's step one. We've already kind of accomplished how you would go about doing that. Step two is get their attention. This is making sure that you're not just in front of them, either physically or over the phone, virtually, but that you have their attention. And I will give you the distinction when we go a little bit deeper into this in a minute. Step three is communicate your value. This is the sales meeting. What are we here to do? We're here to provide you with some value, right? We're here to listen. We're here to ask questions. We're also here to tell you if we think we can help you or not and why. And the last thing that a seller needs to do, particularly in those meetings, is ask for the next step. So based on what we talked about, it sounds like we can help you. Where do you think we go from here? Does it make sense for us to put together a proposal for you? Does it make sense for us to send some samples in? Does it make sense for us to just order 6 cases of this, of your silverware, because I'm consistently shocked at how many spoons go missing on a weekend? Now, from there, you'll see this emblem again. My designer put this together for me a couple years ago. You'll see this emblem again for what it represents, and we'll talk more about it. But for now, this emblem represents a completed sales process. Sometimes the next step is, I'd like to take your order. Sometimes the next step is, I need your attention again so we can sit down and talk some more. In more complex sales cycles, you're going to go through this. It's kind of a loop a couple of times. That's good. That's important. As long as we are moving forward and we're headed in the right direction, it's important that we keep going. But this is how this seller's process repeats itself. Any questions on this? Does this seem simple enough, straightforward enough? Does it seem valid to you, or am I missing anything? Okay, no questions. Here's where I got this several years ago, probably, gosh, almost 20 years ago. I bought this book. It's kind of, I kind of refer to it as a throwaway book. It's my kind of book. The chapters are 2 pages long, right? I saw it at an office supply store, and just, on a whim, I was there buying, I don't know, folders or something, and I saw it on a rack and I picked it up. And basically, this person who was referring to somebody who sells to professional services says, look, all you have to do to keep your pipeline full is make sure you're introducing yourself to new people, you're scheduling meetings with those people, you're having meetings with those people, and you're closing business. At the end of those meetings, you got to close business. I took that and actually dismissed it at first, which is why I'm kind of spending a little bit of time here. I'm looking for people who don't agree with this, right? Because I didn't agree with it at first. And then I spent a little more time with it. And then I came back to it one day, and I actually created a system that helped me to ensure that I was spending my time as productively as possible. And I'm going to share that system with you later. But if we're all good with the initial introduction of it, then what I want to do is spend a little bit more time in each step. I want you to think about this. Based on the time we spent together, and we won't spend a ton of time here with step 1 again, because we've already spent a lot of time, but here are the things that you're asking yourself. What do they look like? Where can I find them? Where can I find more of the ones that are like the ones I like working with right now? Where can I find more customers that are like my best customers right now? And who's growable? So there's your thought process. Now, I want to be clear. Excuse me. We're going to talk about prospecting in sessions coming up. And I think prospecting is about more than just finding brand new people. Some of you are on this call right now and you're saying, I don't need to find more people. My book is full. I have my hands full with the customers that I have. I need to make sure that I can, take care of their needs, and I got to find a way to grow within them. Okay, that's fine. Prospecting looks like a lot of things. It doesn't just look like brand new people. Some of you are, you're inside salespeople, or you're working the showroom. Maybe you're making a few calls to follow up with some folks, but for the most part, you're handling the people that come in. Okay, how do I identify them? How do I make sure this is someone I can help more than once versus just the time that they walk in? Is this based on what I learn about them? Can I do more business with this person? Is this someone I should try to grow with, or is this just a one time? Maybe someone like me who's just coming into a restaurant supply store because you have cool stuff that I can't get at a regular store. That identification is important. Step 2, get their attention. Can you get in front of them? Can you get time on their calendar? I think these are two different questions. And the story I have in the blue there, it's more than just setting an appointment. It's more than just, oh, I don't need to schedule an appointment. They're on my Monday route. They know I usually stop by between 10 and 11. So I'm going to stop by because where else would I go on a Monday? Here's what I learned. And this was one of the most counterintuitive things that I learned that helped me succeed. But I was in my territory probably 4 years at this point. I had moved from one job to the next, but I kept the same customers, was just selling a different set of products in the same industry, in the same territory. So I had access to these physicians' offices. I was selling to orthopedic surgeons. And I remember when I rode along with one of the reps in Tampa this summer, or Clearwater, St. Pete's. It was really familiar, right? It was, stopping by. You've got your customers. You've got, the people who are expecting to see you. That's great. You're welcomed when you come in. Sometimes they can see you. Sometimes they can't. But I had access. Access wasn't the issue. What I recognized one time when I was selling to an orthopedic surgeon, he says, "Come on in, Jeff. Show me what you got." Well, while I'm trying to introduce this product to him, he's reading X-rays on his computer. He wasn't dictating anything, thankfully, but his mind was elsewhere. And I started to think when I left that office, I was like, "What did I really get anything done there?" Maybe he heard me, but he wasn't listening. Maybe he heard me, but did he really receive any of that data? Did he receive any of that information? Was that a good sales call at all? And so one of the things that I did was, even though I had access, I started asking for attention. And if I couldn't get attention, or if I didn't feel like I had attention, I would schedule a return visit. So I say, "Hey, Doc, hey, it looks like you're busy right now. No, Jeff, go ahead. Show me what you got." Here's the thing. I walked in, you weren't expecting me. I really appreciate you being willing to see me. But what I have to talk about needs just 5 good minutes of your attention. You have that right now, I'll take it, but it looks like you don't. I'm happy to come back next week at the same time if you can be better prepared for it. And this was a killer, because what it did was it guaranteed that they were going to receive the information I was giving them, which is way better than just having an opportunity to deliver the information that I needed to give them. My close rate went up significantly. I started actually making the most of these opportunities. And I went from somebody who was running around feeling like he was doing a lot of selling to running around a little less and actually doing a lot more selling. So my challenge to you is, and this is probably a lot easier for you if you're working the showroom, because if someone approaches you, you're pretty confident that you have their attention. But when you're out there in the field, when you're making your regular route, when you are making your stops, are you actually getting the attention of the people you need to see? Or are you just another distraction that they're trying to be polite to? This will increase the productivity that you have. This will increase the effectiveness of your sales calls. And it's really powerful when you say, "You know what? Now's just not the right time. I get it." It's not some passive aggressive thing. And there are a lot of people out there that'll teach you, "Oh yeah, you're not worth my time right now." It's like, no, look, what I have to tell you just requires your attention for just a few minutes. I'm not asking for a lot, but if I can't get a couple minutes, it doesn't make sense to even share it with you. That's a powerful technique, and you'll get the attention. If you don't, well, then you know where you stand, and that's important too. Step 3, communicate your value. This is really simple. This is the sales meeting. But again, let's go back to the things that we talked about in regards to your best customers. What are their motives? Are you communicating your value based on what they're trying to accomplish, or are you just listing the features and benefits of your product or the solution, the service that you're trying to sell them? How can you help them? And again, in a sales meeting, we'll talk more about this in the future, but your questions build as much credibility as your statements do. Are you asking the right questions? And then fourth, what's the next right thing to do? One of my favorite questions to ask was, what's next? What do we do from here? I learned later on in my career that an even more powerful close was to say, normally we would do this. Does that make sense? Making that suggestion is more powerful than just nudging for the next step. Because quite frankly, particularly in some of this more complicated stuff, your buyer doesn't always know what's next. They want to know that they've got a partner who's been there before, so act like you've been there before. Normally, we would do this. Does that make sense? And down here in the blue, never leave a meeting without a defined and scheduled next step. One of the things that came up in the last session last week was, oh, okay, ordinarily, a next step for us would be, we would be asked to put together a quote. We'd come home, we'd put together a quote, and we'd email it to them. And then what? Well, then I have to follow up. Okay. Anybody else ever been stuck in the trap of following up for weeks on end for people who should be returning your calls but hasn't? People who said they were interested and all of a sudden ghost you? Yeah, number one way to prevent that. Hey, Jim, I'm going to put together this quote for you. You can expect that in your inbox within 48 hours. So today's Friday. I'll have it to you by Tuesday mid-afternoon. Let's call it Tuesday close of business. When does it make sense for us to review that once I send it to you? Is Thursday okay? Why don't we put some time on the calendar for Thursday? What's a good time for you? I'll make room on my calendar for you. What works for you on Thursday for us to just go through what you've seen? Get that next meeting on the schedule before you leave the meeting. It's this old thing. It's funny. I grew up with this statement. I read it in a book somewhere, but there's this old adage that if you can put salt on a bird's tail, you can catch it. And it doesn't have anything to do with sodium and aerodynamics. The fact that you're right there, just grab the bird. It's kind of what I think about when it comes to this next meeting. I don't want to chase my tail following up. If I know that what I'm going to send you is worth discussing, why don't we just put time on the calendar to discuss it? So ask for that next step. And the other thing I'll add, it's not on the slide. If you don't have a next step to ask for, it's not a sales call. So I want to open this up. We've gone through those four. I'm going to share with you a scoring system that I put together, but let's talk about next steps. What are common next steps that you run into between commitments and closed order? What are the things that you commonly have to find yourself doing, right? I meet with Jim. Jim says, yeah, I'm interested in taking a look at some of this stuff. But I still have some criteria I need to evaluate before I decide, what are you going to do with that customer? What do you need to send them a quote? Do you need to bring in demos? Do you need to, talk to Jim's senior manager? What is it that, what are the common steps that we have to go through here? You can just pop yourself off mute and share with the group. Andrew, I'll ask you because your camera works today.
Thanks. Well, the next steps are, first of all, when I have a request for quote, I get it to them within the day by end of day, depending
Cool.
on, even in the evening, night, whatever it is. So next steps are me following through with them, making sure they received it, and letting them know that I'm available to meet with you, and they know my schedule. So basically, just staying committed to the commitment.
Cool. So you get the quote. then you got to discuss the quote with them, or hopefully you're just saying, hopefully you're just hoping that they're going to come back and say, yeah, I need, 2 dozen of those, or, I need 2 of those, whatever it might be that you're selling.
Yeah, I mean, but it's what I'm selling is what they already need. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
it's you know what I mean? So it's, I'm going in there and looking around as I walk in and, asking, even the servers, hey, how's your spoon count? Says, oh, we're out of spoons because they keep falling in the trash or whatever it is.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's not just the end user, the decision maker, but it's also the people that are working underneath the decision maker that can help the decision maker when I come in and I say, you guys are short, you got 400 knives, 400 forks, but 200 spoons. You know what I mean? Kind of deal. In other words, know your area and know theirs. So
Love where you're going with that, but let's stay with that. So you've decided that you've done your research to know what they need. That's great. You're going to put together a quote. They're going to say, "Yep, 200 spoons. Can you give us?" If we're buying 20 spoons, Andrew, then this is the price. But we're buying 200. Like, can you cut us a deal? And so you give them a break on volume or whatever. Here's how many come in a case. I get that, but like, let's think about what about a new customer? You
last
go in,
night,
you've introduced yourself, you've made a compelling offer, you've talked about something compelling anyway, then you've got to come back with a quote. And the reason I'm asking this, like, what are all the things that normally have to happen so we can anticipate them and be ready for them? That's what I'm trying to establish here. So,
mhm,
brand new customer, what do you need to do between that meeting you had last night and when that order ships, whenever it ships?
just make sure you follow through and dot your I's and
Great.
you know what I mean?
What does follow through look like, and what I's need to be dotted? Let's be really specific here.
Make sure you get the quote, make sure you got the right thing that they need. Like last night, I was at Cafe Positano's for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Not even, I just, wherever I go, I've got a business card in my hand
Sure.
when I go into a service, a food service, space. So last night I talked to the owner and during dinner, and he needs 16-ounce wine glasses and martini glasses. So I put together a quote this morning and I got it off to him. And now I'm going to stop by the restaurant later on today to make sure he received it.
Okay.
Follow up, follow through.
Cool. And so then after the follow up, but basically the sale has been made. You just want to make sure your counts are correct and your prices are correct.
Correct. But also
Got it.
you have to understand we're also up against Ed Don, Cheney Brothers, you know what I mean? Cisco
Mm-hmm.
and all those guys. So you need to know that your margin is going to work to beat them. And sometimes that margin doesn't work for us, because it's so low because they're buying food. So they get a discount on the equipment, right? We don't do food. We just do equipment. So it's difficult sometimes to stay strategically aligned.
Oh,
Can I
sure.
jump in?
Please
Sorry.
go ahead,
So I
Veronica.
also think like it depends on the sales too. Like, are you dealing with small orders or equipment? But like when you get the order in, you're going to have to place the order. You're going to have to make sure it gets to the vendor. Then you have to check the OA to make sure the pricing hasn't changed. Make sure if there's any back orders, let the customer know if there's any changes, time frames, anything else like that. Make sure everything ships correct, and then follow through. With equipment,
Mhm.
there might be a little bit more making sure, like, especially if you're doing multiple pieces of equipment, is everything coming in at the same time? Is if there's inspections, is that all set? Is everybody on the same schedule? Do you have to delay? Is there a delay with one piece that you might have to delay the other orders, or can some of it get out ahead? So it just going to depend on the order too, like how many steps and how much communication is going to go back and forth between you, the manufacturers, and the customer.
Thank you, Veronica. Let me cut to the chase with where I'm going and why I'm asking this question. Let me give you a context here. Most sales teams, most salespeople could not sit down and do what you all just did. And my guess is that there's people on this call who have never thought about it this way. And so there are things that slip their mind. There are things that get overlooked in this process. I'm not saying that you have to do this, but it certainly helps. But if you took out a pen and a piece of paper and you created a list of all the jobs to be done, a typical order, you'd have a different list for big equipment sales. You would have a different list for small wares. You'd have a different list for some of the other kind of separate product lines that you all sell. But can you list all the things that need to be done? And could you do that in such a way to where if you handed that list to me to, hey, look, you hit the lottery and you're out and I'm your replacement. Hey, Jeff, here's everything that needs to happen in an order. Could you list those things so that someone could pick it up where you left off? Or could you at least create a resource for yourself or an SOP for the things that need to be done to make sure that you don't miss those steps? Because what I will tell you is that most salespeople lose sales, not because they don't know what to do, but because their execution on all of those little things falls by the wayside, slips through the cracks. And we're all human, it's going to happen. So again, my job here is not to tell you, hey, create an SOP, create a huge checklist, do a bunch of busy work for yourself. Don't document everything you already know. I'll tell you what, it's really nice to have so you can make sure that you're consistent. And the punchline here is, if you don't know, and Adam, I'm looking at you, one, because you're in the middle of the screen, two, because you're new. This is stuff that you'd be really interested in knowing as quickly as possible, right? What are the things you know you need to do in the process so that you can make sure you ask for those things while you have the customer in front of you? Instead of, oh, I forgot this thing, I have to follow up. So, oh, I forgot this thing. Now I need to kind of, geez, how do I admit I screwed up without admitting I'm screwing up? Like, these are things that you want to make sure you know what the jobs to be done are so you can make sure you check them all off. And in my experience, most established veteran salespeople, look, they've never needed to document that stuff. That's fine. But every time you go back to a sale that you lost, it's not that you can't win sales by checking all these boxes. If you check all these boxes off, you're going to win sales. If you miss a couple, you're probably still going to win. But every time you lose a sale, it's because there was something along the way that you didn't verify. So my goal here is not to create an exhaustive list. My goal here is to challenge you to think about the things that need to be done in a regular sales process so you can make sure you know what to ask for, you know what to do, and we can tighten that time frame.
Hey, Jeff, I'd like to add something real quick, if you don't mind.
Please.
So I think you make a lot of great points. And I think, especially in this industry, I think the most important thing is the consistent communication and follow-up of the process of what's going to happen after they sign. So it's going to help that order, yes. At that point, they've committed. Let's say you've got a PO, everything goes smooth. The next order is going to come to you as well. If the communication lapses, if we under-deliver and over-promise, the next order is going to go elsewhere or be tougher to get.
For sure.
So I think that's obviously where you're going here, but I think the most important thing is to get the consistent business to keep coming in, is to over communicate and make sure you're following through on all your promises.
I agree with that, Brett. We just did we are completing, it's actually already completed, a new walk-in freezer at Bay Hill. And it was basically, they wanted it in August because that's some of their slower time because of the heat, for the golf course. But for some reason, American Panel couldn't make it happen. So they found a time at the end of October, beginning of November, where there was also a slow piece of business that we had time. So we got the cooler there. We got the freezer there. We got the manufacturer's rep group, Sun Marketing there. We all had a follow-up meeting like a week before we dropped before we started the project, and it went through. It went smooth. It is great. And you know what that does? That builds more business with Bay Hill Country Club. You know what I mean? I mean, it's about being on site. So even though I'm the sales rep, I'm not going to turn a wrench, but at the same time, I'm there being the face of our company and also representing Sun Marketing with those guys and Web Food Service Group that install. And you know what? Now we have a much, much stronger relationship that's going to grow into bigger numbers as days go by.
one to grow on. That's what we used to say in sales meetings, in these really complicated steps or complicated longer processes. And obviously your relationship with Bay Hill is strong, but there's a lot of room to grow there, right? So
100%.
you take these and we used to just, it's just one to grow on. And that was the thing that kept us moving, and look, some processes are more complicated than others. I had a mentor who used to say, you give me 2.5 hours in front of a surgeon and I can sell our product. He said, the problem, I get 2.5 hours, 5 minutes at a time. So what do I need to say in the first 5 minutes? What do I need to say in the next 5 minutes? Where do we need to go? And then we don't want it to be boring. We don't want it to be cookie cutter, the same thing every time. I mean, sure, that's effective, but man, geez, gouge my eyes out. I don't want to do it the same way every time. So let's work back from what needs to happen and let's find a new creative way to get there. We'll keep ourselves excited, keep ourselves interested, maybe have a little fun along the way.
I think
one to grow on.
Especially in this industry, I came from operations, F&B director, you know what I mean? You gotta have a passion for it. You gotta have the excitement, you know what I mean? Of not only because I don't feel like we're selling something. I think we're fulfilling needs. And if you're helping your customer, that's exciting. And instead of spending 12 hours there, I get to leave after about 30 minutes of a meeting. Just coming from operations, right? Yeah. I walk into my restaurant, I walk into one of my old hotels and, hey, you coming back? I'm like, heck no. But I'll be gone in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, Jim
Yes,
Wright. So just as the example just given, and the criteria is set up, like if the customer says, I have other things to consider and this is deep and I'm looking into it, and the example just getting walk-in has like 10, 15 other things that you got to look at. Yeah. That's where you can come in and say, well, let's step back and have an overview. Tell me what some of these other things are that you have to look into. I've done this a whole bunch of times. I will help you with that. I can help you. And you stay in the game at that point. You're not just selling the product. You're like I was saying last week, you're trying to get hired. So what else? Well, we're supposed to go outside. Somebody said we couldn't do this and that, or there's no way to get the refrigeration in. Bang, I'm in. I've done this a bunch of times. And no, you don't put it there, put it over here. We'll go through, we'll do a side mount, we'll put on and on with what you can come up with to solve the problems, because whoever set up the original criteria of what to purchase may not have taken, and obviously hasn't taken all the criteria into consideration.
And also looking at the additional items that they need, because it's not only just a walk-in freezer box. We're also putting in Cambro shelving. You know what I mean? Because now, they've all of their food from that freezer is out in the Cheney truck in the trailer. You know what I mean? Now they're going to bring it back in. What are they going to put it on? Well, we're going to install their shelving today. So, and I'm going to be there to do that too.
That was one of the criteria that comes up. Then, of course, you can additionally handle that, and
right.
Maybe you know what you have in stock and how other people have done it. Well, you just have to hire a refrigeration truck for a little while to make the transition, or whatever you come up with.
Thanks, guys. I'm curious, Adam. We'll go to you because you're a new guy. I'm going to transition to the next thing, but before I do that, what are you? Your gears are grinding right now. What are you thinking?
Well, I think the tale as old as time that, people buy from people they trust, and people that they trust, and people that they like. So, I think that's got to be one of my first steps, is making sure I build that trust. And, I'm trying to take as much as I can from Brett, Scott, Thomas, but at the same time, I got to find my own niche and what works best for me. So learn from all of them, but get my own strategies that that I can adapt to.
Good. Thanks for sharing. One of the things that concerns me a little bit. I'm sorry. Did someone have something? I thought I heard somebody. Maybe it's just background noise. Interrupt me if you have something to say. One of the things that I am concerned about, and I'm always concerned about this because it's burned me in the past. So I go back to the deck here. is, are we focusing on the right things? Because Adam, what I don't want to see you do is chasing your tail, trying to make people like you, trying to make people trust you, trying to get the stuff done, trying to check those boxes so that hopefully you can make a sale one day. Hey, you just got to have relationships is really poor sales advice. It's the sales advice that I got when I got started. But how do we not shortcut, but how do we create the most direct line between unfamiliarity and good relationship? And there are a lot of things that you can do. And I got caught in this trap early on, doing a lot of things that I thought were going to build a relationship that didn't build that much of a relationship. Or maybe they built more of a relationship than I realized, but I didn't know how to convert it at that time. And so I had this really unique point in my career where I spent a little over 3 years, in my first sales job, had earned a reputation, had earned access to a lot of these places, had earned regular and consistent orders. And look, I was doing a lot of customer service in addition to doing the selling work. But what I realized was that a lot of my activity, a lot of the 60 hours and 34,000 miles a year, 60 hours a week and 34,000 miles a year I was putting on my car, was spent doing things that sounded more important than it really is, or than it really was. And so what I had to do was go back, and this is where, as I alluded to earlier, I really refocused on those 4 steps. How many of those steps was I actually taking every week? And I read something similar to this quote that's on your screen right now. This is not mine. I don't remember where I got it. I'm not the only one who says it. And quite frankly, where I saw it, that guy wasn't the first person to say it either. But if you focus on a process, you'll get results. When you focus on results, you get frustrated. And Adam, I'll pick on you. If you're concerned about your number and where it is and where it's not and where you want it to be and just running around building relationships, those 2 things do not have the direct connection that we wish they would have. So it's not that any of it isn't important. Your numbers are real important. Your relationships, incredibly important. But how do we get a little more analytical? How do we dive in and be a little more specific about how we create a relationship and how that relationship turns into revenue? Because we'd love to make friends and our best customers end up becoming our friends. But I don't know how many people are in a job right now to make friends instead of money. So we got to make sure that we make the main thing, right? And one of the things that I did was I went back and based on, again, this book, I either modified or bastardized the activity in here, but I want to share with you what I created, and it was a little bit of a scoring system. And this is one of my favorite slides to show because this is actually my scorecard from Streamsong back in early 2016, round of my life. And I've been chasing that 74 ever since. But my scorecard. Thank you.
I used to work there.
Oh, you used to work there?
I was there on task force during COVID.
Oh, dude, the rumors are that I'm maybe going back in the spring, but we'll see about that. I don't know if I can recreate that 74 either.
I live like 28 minutes away, Jeff. So just give me a call. I'll meet you.
Yeah, I could be there.
You're gonna have
I'm
to
available
prove this.
that day.
You're gonna have to prove
We'll
this 74 because I've played blue and it's not easy.
I was on the black. I managed the Bone Valley Tavern on the.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Near the
Yeah, we were there when they were seeding the black. We saw sprinklers and stuff. But yeah, this was March 2016.
Cool.
Anyway, enough about my golf game and apparently the trip I need to make now. Let's go back to those 4 steps. What Jeffrey J. Fox said in this book was score 20 points a week. So for each one of those steps has a number, right? So if you're always introducing yourself to people, if you are always scheduling meetings with people, if you are always having those meetings, and if you're always closing sales, then if you have a steady stream of that kind of activity going, you're never going to be without pipeline. You're never going to be without closed revenue. And I thought it was really simplistic. I thought there's no way that can work. And then I sat down and I said, you know what? I'm in a new role. I'm going to try it. So I modified this a little bit. I gave myself 1 point for an introduction or a first call. Maybe I was introduced, maybe it was a cold call. Didn't matter. I give myself 1 point for that. When I scheduled a meeting, and what that meant was I got attention, right? I had dedicated attention for my customer. I had time on their calendar or, an agreement from them, to give me 5 minutes that I was asking for. Then I gave myself 2 points. I gave myself 3 points when I actually had the meeting. And I gave myself a 4th point when it led to a next step, either a commitment to buy or, hey, we need to talk about this a little bit more, come back at another time. And, and then if I scheduled that next time, I got 2 more points. You see how these things stack up. And I thought 20 points was too light. If the author was suggesting 20, I was going to do 25. We'll talk about the points per week in a minute. But here's what I learned. Well, actually, hold on. Let me go one more here. I want to make something clear here. You only get that first point once. If I called on a new office or called on, in your case, a new restaurant, and I didn't get any attention, but I left a business card and a brochure, I gave myself 1 point. If I went back the next week and did it again, no points for that. We've introduced ourselves. And if I ran around, I think this is the litmus test. If I ran around and I just did that for 25 restaurants in week 1 and did it for the same 25 restaurants in week 2, I'm not selling anything in week 2. I'm really not doing much. So I'm not rewarding, futile behavior here. I'm just giving myself the credit for starting the process. The real traction is gotten when you get their attention, when you schedule those meetings. The next thing I want to make sure that I point out here is there were no 7-point meetings. I either had 3 points for having the meeting or it was 4 points because that meeting led to a next step. And obviously we want more 4-point meetings than 3-point meetings, but I also have something else I'll show you in a minute to help you identify where you might be falling short or where you might need to focus more. But here's what I learned. I had my old calendar on my old computer and I had my new calendar on my new computer because I had a new job. And I was looking at both. I was working, like I said, 60, 65 hours a week, running around doing a lot of service work. But when I was really looking into what I was doing, wasn't doing a whole lot of selling. Wasn't having many meetings. When I had meetings, they weren't really productive sales meetings. I wasn't selling anything. It was checking in on an order. I was maybe taking an order. By the way, someone calls me to take an order. No points for that. The order is the result you're looking for, but unless I found a way to make that a meaningful exchange to talk about the next thing or to build the relationship in some productive way, no points for that. The stricter you are about these points, the higher the standard you're going to hold yourself to and the more money you're going to make, the more sales you're going to make. But I took all this and I went from running around working 60, 65 hours a week in the same territory with focused effort and actually looking at my calendar and saying, where are my 25 points going to come from this week? Ended up active selling time, instead of 60, 65 hours, about 20, 25 hours. And all my revenue did was triple. So if you're scoring at home, 3 times the revenue in a third the time, that's a 9x return on time. I'm just going to let that linger for a little bit. So what I would like you to do, got a little bit of a challenge. I'm going to give you 5 minutes here before the end. The question comes up, well, how many points do we need to score every week? For me, it was 25. After a year of 25, I moved up to 30. I grew again. Didn't triple this time, but after that year, I moved to 30. The next year I moved to 35 and I found that I was really just trying to score points and lost the intention behind the points. So there is a point at which this breaks. But what was 25 for you might be 40 for you, might be 15 for you. I'm not in the field making calls anymore. My number, and actually now that I have to deliver the product that I sell, my number is actually much lower now. My number's like 8 a week, right? So everybody's number is going to be different. But my homework assignment for you, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do it right now, is pull out your calendars, take a look at your last 4 weeks. When you apply this rubric, how many points did you score? If you don't keep a good record in your calendar, which a lot of people do or don't, then we're going to start moving forward for the next 2 weeks. I want you to, just at the end of the day, give yourself a score and say, yep, here's how many points I scored today. And, you don't have to contrive anything. You don't have to even change your behavior. We're just trying to establish a baseline. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can start sharing again, because I can share some music. I'll put some music on in the background. Let's take 5 minutes and just pull your calendar out. Keep track of how many points you scored, and then let's take an average. And then when we rejoin, we'll talk about what you learned and what's next. Any questions before we do this? Is it clear what I'm asking you to do? Drop a 1 in the chat if it's clear what you're asking me to do. Drop a 2 if you're confused. Drop a 3 if you already started. All right, we got a bunch of 1s. Put some music on, and we'll get going. All right, fading out a little early. Give about 4 minutes here. Drop a 1 in the chat if you learned something. Cool. John, is it Geisentanner? Did I say that right?
Tanner.
Giesentanner. Sorry about that. John, what'd you learn?
Well, my biggest thing is I usually after a meeting I would not have another commitment after. Usually I would just tell them and reach back out to me. Really setting up something to reach back out to them immediately after. Say, so where do we go after this? Because I did not usually do that. After the meeting was done, I was like, hey, if there's anything else, reach back out to me. So it's really just, oh, go ahead, sir.
So you were, I guess, let me understand that. Was it that you weren't closing your sales, or was it that there was nothing that needed to be done?
Usually after my meeting, I would go ahead and tell them like, so this is where I would need to be. And the next thing I would see is the commitment. They would come to me then, rather than me trying to schedule to go back out to them and get a commitment and also try to get something to follow up on it.
Mm-hmm. So you want to do more of that, or this didn't apply because that's not how your process works?
I mean, that was just something I never thought about. And it's like asking them, so what else can I do for you after this? I just honestly never did that. I was always, let's focus on what I'm working on now and finish this, and we'll talk about anything else after this process is done. I wouldn't add it on.
Okay. So you could start adding that stuff on and upsell a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Ron Folland or Folland, what'd you learn? Did we lose Ron? Ron, you're muted if you're talking. All right. Ron's still muted. If anybody can find Ron, let us know. Ken Yeager, you said you learned something.
Oh, yeah, I did. And maybe it was just a little self-awareness. I looked at over everything, and what I do is, or what I find I do is I try to be the change agent, to rights, stay ahead of the changes, if you will, be the change agent. So do follow back up because, I mean, meetings before I said good or bad, good, better, best. Somebody else said, you got to lay a lot of different options out to a customer. And it's really about those options that you laid out, follow up with those. And then there's always going to be change. And if it's a large project, then all of a sudden your competitors are kind of left in the dust because, you know, you are that change agent. You're making those, you know, you're making those suggestions, to Jim's point, you know, that because the architect starts with a picture and you know, the whole art versus, science. I would say that, the science is everything we're learning now. The art is how you apply it. So it's the, you know, the paint, the paintbrush, the canvas. That's the science part that we're learning, but we got to apply it because we're going to try to make a painting. We're going to try to close this project deal, get this new customer, whatever it is. So to me, it's like the follow up is always going to be there's always options out there. I mean, and that's just the nature of what we do, and to be that change agent or be that person that stays ahead of it and go, you know, leave everybody else in the dust. That and then your profit goes up. You know, you may start off with a baseline project because hey, everybody and their brother bid the thing. But when the changes start, then all of a sudden you look at it as like a sub, and all of a sudden these change orders, your margin goes up, your margin goes up, your margin goes up. That's how I do it, and that's the way I looked at it, and that's kind of what I've been doing for my career. So that said.
Cool.
Oh, and the other thing too, I wanted to share one more thing since everybody was sharing things. Attrition is an absolute in our industry. So you got to constantly be canvassing for new customers. You know, you can't sit on your hind laurels, if you will. I lost a customer this past week. Had three restaurants, good customer, was building, had a fourth, closed during COVID. All of a sudden the timing was right and he sold out. And the customer that bought him is also a customer of ours, and some other associate has that business now. So anyway, so I think that was the moral of it. You know, you got to keep going at it, you know. So the follow up, you know, the change that I'm talking about, that could be the follow up for people. It's easy to do because it's on the paper. It's right there on your quote. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Mhm.
All right, everybody. I want you to do this homework. If 5 minutes wasn't enough time, and it probably wasn't, spend some time looking at this, because what we're doing is creating a baseline. And my challenge for you all is add 6 points to your average. 6 points is a meeting scheduled every week. And then once you schedule a meeting every week, you're going to start having a meeting every week. If you close that meeting, or if that meeting leads to a positive next step, that's 4 more points. So schedule a meeting, have a good meeting every week, in addition to what you have right now. That will add 6 points. That's how quickly this stuff scales. So keep your eye out Tuesday morning for the newsletter. It's coming. I'm going to have a link to a video from something that came up last session but didn't in this session. So I want to make sure everything's going to be clear for everybody. So it's a cool little exercise for how to map this activity out for yourself. And hey, be safe out there tonight with your kids, or have fun for Halloween. And I will speak to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Good engagement today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. See you guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
See you guys. Have a great weekend.
Weekend.